want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
We are the Mad Men of Masculinity.
Your home for healthy masculinity. We're just real men having real conversations for you. Good day, Mad Men Mafia.
I am Kirk M. Samuels.
And I still am Jason B. Kendrick.
And we are the Mad Men of Masculinity.
That's right. We're just real men having real conversations for you.
Real conversation.
We having real ones today, folks. We having real ones, especially for you dudes. You dudes, you
Yep.
know, this is one of those topics. It's one of those things that every man needs, but not every man is told how to get.
I agree for sure. Today we are talking about self-confidence.
Ooh, deep.
Self-confidence. That would be confidence in one's self. And I mean, this can be kind of a touch and go topic for a lot of people. And I suppose over the next few segments here, we will get into the in-depths and the out-shallows of it all. But the whole idea of self-confidence, man, is something that, that we probably should all have in some area of our life, if nothing else. There should be some part of our life, some lane of the highway where we are confident enough to say, when I'm in that lane, I'm confident. Like I'm in that groove, I'm good. And as men, we should have one lane of our masculine highway that puts us in that space.
Yeah, I think it's something that, especially nowadays for men, I think you got a great point. You want to have at least one thing that you have self-confidence in. Most of us are told nowadays we're supposed to have self-confidence in everything. We're supposed to know everything. We're supposed to be competent at everything. And we know as men, being logical thinkers, that there's no way to be confident at everything or be competent at everything. And so I think what really comes down to is that sense of self, that self-awareness, and that can breed that self-confidence, especially when you're willing to say no. When you're like, no, that's not my thing. No, I don't jive with that. That's, I don't want to do that. When you're willing to say no, when you're willing to have boundaries, then you can build that self-confidence. I think it's something that probably most of the guys nowadays have not been taught. We didn't grow up next to an older man, or a father figure, a gentleman to teach us what true self-confidence as a man looks like. We've been told by a lot of single mothers what they think self-confidence for a man looks like, and they did the best they could. They really didn't mean any harm. They just thought that that's what it should look like. But for us men, it tends to look different, tends to feel different, and self-confidence is something that we need in every aspect of our life to be successful. We need to have self-confidence in ourselves. We need to have self-confidence in our business. We need to have self-confidence in our relationships to be the success we want to be. And for most of us, it's a lacking thing because of nice guy syndrome, because of lack of masculine influence, and maybe because of the feminist movement, maybe because of, many other reasons. But self-confidence is something every man needs. And so from my perspective, I believe self-confidence is something we can gain, we can learn, we can grow when we start to dig into who we are, learn who we are, and stop hiding those things. Because that shame and that fear of people finding us out and finding out about whatever our shadow is killing our self-confidence.
One of the one of the things I witness in society, in general, period, but even amongst a lot of men, is the front that I'm going to say we, because I put myself in the category of men. I try not to live this way, but I see this this front that a lot of guys can put on, and that front is almost like a movie set. Like if you ever been to Disney or Universal Studios or something like that, or some sound lot or something like that, where I mean, it's everything looks from the front like from the street version, everything looks like, wow, this is a neighborhood, right? But then as soon as you peek behind that front layer, you realize there's absolutely nothing there, and it can trip you out when you do peek behind that. But there's almost a syndrome of being, I like to call it, being a mile wide but an inch deep. And like I said, I think it's a cultural thing, but also a masculine thing, where we look big and scary, but in most cases, there's not a lot of depth.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to kind of, you want to be the warrior in the garden, not the gardener in the war. The loudest guy in the room tends to be the most afraid. The most capable, smartest, toughest guy in the room tends to be the most silent. And so self-confidence may seem like, oh, bravado, and I got to be the alpha dog, and I got to be the loudest, and up front, I got to be the leader. But real self-confidence is quiet. Just like real strength is quiet, and real strength comes with kindness. It's not all about being rude or being the loudest or being, mean. A lot of guys didn't get the education about what real self-confidence is. And so they kind of picked it up here and there and everywhere, thinking, oh, well, I'll watch this, tough guy story or this action adventure thing and this superhero guy. And so that's how I get self-confident. But self-confidence, really, the root is sense of self. As a man, you need to know yourself and you need to be unapologetically who you are. And that will gain you the true self-confidence, the self-confidence that isn't faked. It's not fronted. You're not faking the funk and going, oh, I'm self-confident, when everybody's kind of like, really? You sure? Doesn't feel like it. And so for us as men, if we didn't get that education, sorry, it's now time to educate yourself. There's plenty of platforms. There's plenty of books to read. There's plenty of classes to take. But the best way and the easiest way is to just look in the mirror and start figuring out who you are. What do you stand for? And if you don't stand for anything, if you're still playing the nice guy, if you still don't have a foundation of who you are and know who you are, that's the first step you need to take. Figure out who you are. That self-confidence will come naturally as you take that journey of, this is who I am, this is what I believe in, this is what I'm passionate about, and I am this.
The opposite of mile wide and an inch deep, I guess you could say the converse of that is an inch wide and a mile deep, where, still waters run deep, and we should have a sense of depth to us as men specifically. I mean, we should have a sense of another dimension that can't necessarily be seen looking straight on. However anybody might be, watching us, if they're watching us on a screen, it's probably two dimensions, right? There's height and width, and what you don't get is a sense of depth, right? And so in our culture, we experience a lot of height, a lot of width, but we don't experience a lot of depth. And as men in this culture, for us to endeavor to have some kind of depth, that gives us some level of advantage, some level of perspective. That gives us some level of respect. And definitely it gives us some level of self-confidence where, to your point, I don't need to be the loudest one in the room. To your point, I can be in a space and I can listen twice as much as I talk, such that when I do say something, it means something. I'm not just, I'm not just a clanging bell or drum or something like that, where, it's like when I chime in, it's because I've taken the time to consider something, because I'm bringing some kind of experience, some kind of wisdom. And the only way to have wisdom is to observe, to be a good observer, to be a good receiver and absorber, and, to have depth. You can't have wisdom if you don't have depth. And the older we get as men, we should have not only increasing amounts of depth, but we should have increasing amounts of wisdom. And that's one of those things, again, that you can't teach. That's something that you gotta go get. But when you're in a space where somebody's the loudest, flashiest, all that kind of stuff, it's like a WWE match, where they come in with all the craziness and hoopla and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to like a regular boxing match or even like an MMA fight. Those guys, they walk into the ring a whole different way. They walk into the ring ready to do battle. They're not coming in with all the, the flames and the torches and all that kind of stuff. They come in and they're ready to do some work, because in that setting, it's more than just the surface. It's not a predetermined outcome. Like, you got to have some tools in your bag. You got to have an arsenal for that fight. And so us as men, we got to endeavor as the years go on to get to the point where we do have some sense of depth, some sense of something else to offer that nobody else in the room probably has.
Yeah, I mean, we just did last episode with stages of a man's life, and I think self-confidence is one of those things that grows over time. And to your point, that whole depth thing, it's not the flash. We were all, as teenagers, so worried about what other people thought, so worried about how we look, so worried about being embarrassed. Then you get to a point in your life where you've grown and you've learned and you've fallen on your face enough and you fail forward that you're like, I don't really care what people think. And that's when a lot of that self-confidence comes in, when you're not so worried about offending others. You're not so worried about what, the Joneses think. You only worried about your opinion of yourself, your family's opinion of you, knowing that you're trying to better yourself and you're following your foundation, you're following your heart, you're following your principles. That kind of self-confidence comes from, it's not, it comes from being deep. And what we see most of the time now is that flash. It's just flash, it's fluff, it's like fireworks and tinfoil and, wrappings over on the Christmas present. It's not real. It just looks pretty, but real depth. I mean, some of the most deep people might be a homeless guy that's dirty, but he spends his time meditating, he spends his time thinking, he spends his time going deep. And sometimes that guy that looks like he's all that, with the flashy car and, the sales guy with all the money and stuff like that, but he's the loudest one in the room and he can't stop for a minute to be with himself. He's always got to be go, go, go. That's kind of that flash and fluff that we're talking about. Real self-confidence comes from depth, and real depth comes from self-worth, and real self-worth comes from self-awareness. And that's one of the things that we as men, especially nowadays, with nice guy syndrome being, on its 50th anniversary now, with the feminist movement, with, not having enough masculine influences or healthy masculine influences in our life. We see all the WWE superstars, we see all the movie superheroes and action heroes, but we're not seeing real heroes. We're not seeing real depth and real self-worth from men in a lot of different ways. And so for a lot of us, we've got to cultivate that ourselves by getting around men who do have self-worth, who do have self-confidence, and learning from them, because it's a different thing than what we see. It's a different thing than what we've probably been taught. And it's something that we have to generate ourselves as men nowadays. And the best way to do that is get around other guys who are on that same path, who do have self-confidence, who are generating self-confidence by doing self-work. And speaking of self-work, it's time for us to do our self-work break. We're the Mad Men of Masculinity. You're listening to us on KLDC, 1220 AM in the Mile High City, and we'll be right back.
Boom. If you're watching us, if you're listening to us, hey, chime in. What do you think? We're curious about what's your take on self-confidence? Who do you know with self-confidence? The people who come to mind when you think of self-confidence. What kind of people come to mind in our society, or what kind of people do you think about when you think about the word self-confidence? I'd be curious to know. As we, like I said, we're out here every week. We come in and we record our radio show, record our podcast over Facebook and YouTube and all those kinds of things, all the other social media platforms, the talks and the grams and all that kind of junk. But we really do. We want to know, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, make sure, like, subscribe, especially on YouTube, and, send us some comments. Let us know. Because, I think self-confidence looks different for a lot of folks, but it probably has the same core, especially true self-confidence. I think it has the same kind of core roots, but it may look different for different people. Maybe some guys like, Kirk, they're more extroverted. Some guys are like me, they're more introverted, but there's still self-confidence there. It's just maybe shows up differently. So let us know what you think.
Oh, here we go.
All right.
We're back. Mad Men and Masculinity, KLDC, 1220 AM in the Mile High City, on the interwebs, everywhere. Where we go right now, I mean, you got to think, man, this is getting posted on certain platforms that, man, are man, we could have grandkids and stuff that's going to get to like pull this up and watch this, and like, man, you know, or some people that aren't even born yet as we record this gonna get to watch this whole thing, man. And so that's
one of these days the Leah's gonna be watching M-Pop on the YouTube, checking him out from back in the day.
That's right, man. And speaking of, you know, I at this point now I have 2 granddaughters, and whenever I'm around them, I'm telling you, dude, I mean, we're expanding exponentially. The franchise is growing. You know, but every time I'm around them, you know, I feel a sense of obligation to having something to offer. Like, there are certain places you get in life where you should have something to offer. And, you know, if you want to call that self-confidence, you can call it self-confidence, whatever, but to understand kind of your role in the room. And when you walk into the room, you know, you not only do you have to have, but you got to be able to project that self-confidence. And part of that, I think the core of it is a sense of identity. You know, can you answer the question, who am I? Who am I in this life? Who am I in this world? You know, where do I fit in? And so when you have a sense of identity, it makes it a whole lot easier when I walk into the room and I understand that, you know, I'm not the parent, I'm not the dad, I'm the granddad, you know. And so, you know, my role is a little bit different in this case, but either way, to be able to have the confidence to project that into the space, and that self-confidence, it ultimately makes you the thermostat and not the thermometer. Where you walk into the room, you set the temperature, you don't necessarily respond or react to what the temperature is in the room.
Boom, he hit the nail on the head, folks. This guy's wise and showing his wisdom, because I mean, that's exactly what we were talking about. That's that self-awareness. Like, you know who you are, and when you know who you are, you have that self-awareness, every room is yours. You know what role you're playing, and you know who you are. So when you step into a room, it's not like, oh, do I fit in here? Oh, you're doing that nice guy thing of people pleasing and being like, oh, I don't know, is this my room? Oh, is it somebody else's room? Oh, I don't know. How hot is it? Is it cold? I don't know. You know, you have all these questions. But when you're self-aware, you know who you are, you know the role you're playing, especially as a man, you walk into a room with confidence. You walk into a room, you take up space. You walk into the room, and it's not about being flashy and showy. You're not the WWE superstar that needs intro music and fireworks to walk into the room. You're just you. You walk in, you resonate with some people, you don't resonate with other people. That's just the way it is, but you know that you belong there. And for a lot of us, I know I spent a lot of my life wondering if did I belong in this room? Do I belong there? Where do I belong? Who, is somebody gonna let me in? Do I need to ask permission? And I was looking for somebody to be like, yeah, kind of give me that, like, yeah, okay, your turn here. Here's your magic ticket. Here's your golden ticket. Go ahead and do it. It's not really how life works. We need to make our own luck. We need to make our own presence felt. We need to make our own, create our own life, our own purpose, our own passion. And by having self-awareness, by having that self-confidence and knowing that whatever room you walk into, you belong there, whatever job you walk into, you belong there, knowing who you are builds out self-confidence. But so many guys they're lacking that just from a lack of self-awareness. And I mean, if you can't sit with yourself, if you can't sit alone with your thoughts, especially as a man nowadays, there are so many of us that are running from ourselves. The woo busy guys, they go from job to the gym, to the bar, to the bed, and right back up and do it all over again. But they've never sat alone with their thoughts and never sat alone with themselves, even get to know themselves, their heart, who are they, and what do they really want? Because so many of us are chasing a brass ring that we didn't even choose, or we wouldn't have chosen if we knew who we are and had that self-awareness and self-confidence to say, no, that's not for me. We're chasing a big bag of money, trying to look flashy because that's what we've been sold as. This is what it means to be a man. And we don't have the self-confidence to be like, no, that doesn't work for me. I'd rather be living in the woods or buy me a bike and go travel the world. A self-confident man isn't really flashy. Most of them are quiet. There's a quiet confidence, stoicism, and it's a foundation of self-awareness. So what we're talking about, people, is self-confidence comes from knowing yourself, having that self-awareness.
Self-confidence, it is your ticket into the room. It is your ticket into the space. Self-confidence is the space that you hold space when you bring self-confidence into a room. Again, whatever your role is, your role could be, it could be the kicker on the football team. And maybe you only go out on the field, 5 times in a game. But guess what? You could be the one to kick the game winning. If you don't have self-confidence when you step out on the field with, 3 seconds left on the clock and your team is down by 2 points and you need to step up and nail a 50-yard field goal, you better believe that guy, even though he might be one of the smallest guys on the team physically and spent the least amount of time on the field, you better believe that when he steps out on the field, he has to have that self-confidence. Like, this is mine. This is my moment. And when you walk into that and when you hold that space, you almost command your own presence. You command your own moment in time, your own space in amongst other people. And that doesn't have to be an arrogant kind of thing. That's the fine line. That's actually a great pivot of, there's, self-confidence is not really arrogance. I think, when you take it overboard, when it becomes false, false confidence, then yeah, it presents as arrogance. But, when you're confident, it's like, no, I got this, throw me the ball, put the ball in my hands. And I've been working hard at this. I've been training, I've been practicing, I've been whatever. I got this. I got this moment. This moment was made for me. And so, whatever your self-confidence is, it doesn't have to go so far as to just being arrogant. Again, to the point where, the arrogant one is probably some sense of a movie set. Some sense of somebody just trying to play up a moment or something like that. But when you can just walk into a space with self-confidence, man, you own that space. You take that space and you hold up the space.
Yeah, and back to the ticket analogy, your self-confidence is your ticket to success, is your ticket to relationships. And to be completely honest, I got this topic because, Turk and I have to figure out what we're going to talk about every week from our girl, Brianna Hoffman, BrieLifeCoach.com, if you guys are looking for a dating coach. But she was talking about male self-confidence and how that is what women are looking for. Well, guess what? Your self-confidence, your self-awareness, your self-worth, when you bring that to the table, that's what gets you in those rooms. That's what gets you those dates. That's what gets you the success and the relationships and maybe even the money in the bag and the stages, all those things. That ticket comes from your self-confidence and being able to say, yeah, I can do that, because opportunities come around all the time. And when you have self-confidence, you see opportunities everywhere. When you have a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-confidence, and you're fronting, putting on a show, and then somebody says, oh, here, you do this. And you see how you watch those guys crumble because they're fronting. They're like, oh, I'm just putting on a show. I don't really have self-confidence. I don't really want to get the microphone and get on the stage. I'm scared of public speaking. Public speaking is speaking, just like we're doing now. We just talk to people. But when you have that self-confidence, that self-awareness, you go, oh, yeah, I can talk. But when you're fronting, putting up a show, doing that WWE flair, but there's nothing behind it because it's all front, when the opportunities come, a lot of times you fail because there's nothing behind it. And all we're saying is a little self-awareness, a little, if you can say no to something because that doesn't align with your values, doesn't align with your purpose, doesn't align with your goals, that's self-confidence. A lot of businesses, a lot of bosses would much rather hear no, that doesn't align, and then offer you something else because of your self-confidence, because they know you have self-worth, than for you to just be like, oh yeah, whatever you want, and then be front and have nothing behind it. Self-confidence is deep. Like Kirk says, it's maybe an inch wide, but it's a mile deep. It's deep and there's depth there, but it's foundational depth. And that's that self-awareness that builds that self-confidence. You got to know yourself, man.
Yeah. When she was talking about the relationship aspect of this topic here, I immediately thought that, absolutely do women find self-confidence attractive. And I'm not a woman, never have been. Not every man can say that, but I firmly believe that at their core, women feel safer when they're with a self-confident man as opposed to a man that obviously doesn't have any kind of confidence in himself. I think women feel safer, physically safer, maybe emotionally safer, and that can backfire as well. But I think ultimately that's why women end up with the bad boys. They tend to be attracted to the bad boys because those bad boys can project that confidence and almost to a point of manipulation. And then and then once the rubber meets the road, they really don't have anything to offer, and that's when they end up, hurting the woman that they're with in some kind of way. But I think that's why women get attracted to that thing, because to them it's some sense of safety, emotional safety, like I said, maybe physical safety of, we can walk down this alley together. I'm good. I got this, or whatever. Like, when we sit down in a restaurant, I'm going to face the door, because I got this, because you're safe with me. I'm looking over your shoulder. I got your back, kind of thing. And so, yeah, when she mentioned that about the dating aspect of it and the women aspect of it, that's the one thing I thought of in terms of, I would imagine, women probably, if you peel back the layers, they feel safe with a self-confident man. And so when we can present that way, where we're not even really looking for their validation, like almost, I found the most, back when I was single, I found the most success when I didn't care.
Yeah.
Like when I just didn't care, it was like, yeah, you can like me or you don't have to like me. Like, I'm good either way.
Mhm.
That's all of a sudden when you become more attractive to women, when it's like, I'm putting forward the effort of who I am, but if, I may not be everybody's cup of tea, but if I am, a sweet tea. And it's up to you to decide. And if you decide I'm not for you, then, then thank you,
All
next.
good. I'm good. Yeah, I mean that's the true definition of self-confidence. I think after this next break, we should actually let the ladies know what real self-confidence a man looks like. Because to your point, a lot of those bad boys, that's fronting. That's not real self-confidence. So we're the Mad Men of Masculinity. This is KLDC. We'll be right back.
And I think too, man, I really do think that, unfortunately, some guys have gotten good with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at all the pickup artist stuff in the game book, and all that stuff. Like they figured out how to push the buttons, but when it came down to real time, like brass tacks, like what's behind it? Oh, nothing
there. All right, let's go.
All right. And we're
doing
back.
our thing, doing what we do.
That's what we do every weekday, or not every weekday, every week on Monday. That's what I meant to say. We'll be on here live. You can come talk to us, chat with us, see what we look like. If you're just listening to on the radio, you can see what Faces Radio look like. But today,
you got that right.
About self-confidence in men.
You can see how good looking we look.
Well, see how good looking you look. I'm still working on my tan.
Right. I hear you. But we were talking about that, just the whole idea of dating and self-confidence. When a man can show up in his self-confident self, he's not trying to be liked. He's not trying to overly impress in a false kind of way. He's not trying to be something that he's not. And like I said, I can think back to when I was, when I was single.
Looks like we might have a few technical difficulties. That's all right. I can talk for both of us. But yeah, self-confidence in men looks different. And a lot of times I think what the ladies are attracted to tends to be the bad boy image, which isn't really self-confidence. It's much more time up front. It's a bravado masking insecurity underneath. That's why we say a lot of times strength and self-confidence is quiet. It's subtle. They walk into a room and you feel it more than you see it or hear it. They walk into a room and they don't care if you like them. They don't care, whether you want them there or not there. They don't care if whatever you think. They're just there doing them, being self-confident, being themselves. So what were you saying, Kirk, before you got cut off?
I'm saying it's a fine line between that. It's a fine line of caring, not caring, but caring. Like, I always wanted, I was talking about when I was, when I was in my single days, it was almost like I had the most success when I wasn't coming in trying to do the song and dance, and I was just coming in being me, and then whatever that panned out to. Again, I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but if I am, it's sweet tea. So when we can step into, if there's guys out there maybe in the dating scene, or maybe you're dating companies, meaning looking for a job or whatever. I'm definitely not saying walk in there like you don't care. Obviously, you need to walk in with your best self forward. But I think people can see these days when you're just being fake. People can see these days when you're just saying what you think they want to hear and all those kinds of things. They want to hear some sense of who you are, some sense of identity, and they want to hear some sense of confidence. Like I got this. I may not always get it right, but I'm always going to be right in my pursuit of trying to get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying about whether you're looking for the date or dating the job. What we tend to lack a lot of times, especially coming from a nice guy syndrome, or not having a lot of personal self-confidence as guys, we tend to try to prove ourselves to the other one. We try to prove ourselves to the job. We try to prove ourselves to the woman. We're trying to get them to like us instead of finding out if they're a match for us. Like, you go into a dating scene, with self-confidence, and you're asking them just as many questions, like seeing if they fit for you. You're not trying to impress them. You're trying to see if they can impress you. Same with jobs. You go in there and they're going to ask you questions. Why don't you ask them questions? Find out if it's a match for you. That's self-confidence. That's knowing your self-worth. A lot of times we go in and we're doing the opposite. We're turning them off, putting ourselves in the friend zone when it comes to dating, because we're trying to prove to them that we're good enough. We're trying to prove to them that they should hang out with us instead of them proving to us, or instead of us having enough self-confidence to be like, okay, I'll show you my hand. You show me yours. We'll see if this matches. But a lot of times, when you're lacking that self-confidence, you're doing a nice guy syndrome, you're kissing butt, and then you're doing that kind of fake self-confidence thing. Yeah, we can all watch pickup artists, videos, or read the books and figure out how to push the buttons and play the game. But that's not real self-confidence. That's shallow. It's fake. And it doesn't last long. Why do you think most relationships last 3 days or 3 months? Because you only fake it so long. Why fake it? Why are we faking anything? We want to make sure we find reality. We want to find something that's real. We want to find a real connection. And you can't find that if you're being fake. So have true self-confidence, have true self-worth, have them prove as much to you as you're proving to them. Show them your true self. I was watching a video the other day, we talked about it, because like Craig Ferguson was one of my favorite late night hosts, and he was like the best flirt because he was saying things just to amuse himself. He didn't care whether they laughed or not. He was amusing himself, and then he would double down, but he was always very promotional for that, say to his guest. If they try to put themselves down, I was like, no, you're awesome. You can watch all these things and learn how to do these things, but for him, it was just, that's who he was. He was just being himself. He was being self-confident, and then it worked really well. But like anything else, it's a skill. He got better at it as he went along. If you're struggling with self-confidence, you're struggling with self-awareness and self-worth, and you want to get the job, get the girl, have the success in all the areas of life, you got to look in the mirror and probably get some guys around you and ask for some help, because it's much easier to learn these things and practice these things when you got other guys doing the same thing.
You talked about these, there's these pickup artists, content providers, and some of that I think is just pure entertainment as far as,
Almost definitely
setup scenarios and all that kind of stuff. And then there's, a whole line of types of videos, the whole Riz thing these days. And, some of that is, again, I think, probably what is a lost art is the whole idea of a guy just approaching a woman, approaching somebody in a non-creepy way, in public, and just be able to approach with some level of, and that's how we should approach life, I think, with some level of, of self-confidence, of like, I have something to offer. And so I'm not outcome driven. I'm not, worried about rejection, anything like that, because my identity is secure. If I'm not your thing, then okay. But to be able to walk up to, again, I'm talking single guy out there looking for a woman. If you're able to walk up, and just to be able to say hi, or wow, you look great today, and introduce yourself. My name is Jim Bob, or whatever your name is, and just strike up a conversation with somebody. But that level of confidence is probably missing in our culture, especially from the ability to do it easy. And, probably one of the reasons why it's missing in our culture, from men anyway, is because we didn't have, some kind of role model. We didn't have somebody leading the way for us, showing us how to be who we are and how to be comfortable in our own skin. That from whatever, or trying to formulate that from some, feminine centric perspective. But to be able to have confidence as a man, and to be able to walk in and be like, hey, how you doing? And to greet somebody like that, even if it's just a generic interaction, a firm handshake, looking eye to eye, those kinds of things are stuff that I know that I taught my son at a young age. Like, this is how you greet somebody, this is how you interact with people. And so, when we have some sense of identity like that, then like I said, even in a dating scenario, you're able to just walk in and approach somebody with just a very straightforward, matter of fact, here's who I am, and I know what I have to offer. And if it's not for you, then it'll be for somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, confident parents, self-confident parents breed self-confident kids. They pass that down. They show what that looks like. And I'm not 100% downing pickup artist stuff, because sometimes you got to start where you're at. If you've never talked to a girl, you've never looked a girl in the eye, never been able to walk across the room, you get tongue-tied, and so you use these things to practice, you use these things to get some game, cool. But make sure that that's based on you. I've seen a lot of these guys, they continue with that to a point, then they realize, even in their own lives, even the guy who wrote the book, The Game, Neil Strauss, or whatever his name was, he realized how fake that was after a while, because he didn't have any depth. It was all shallow. He could pick him up, he could take him home, but then what? Yeah, okay, you got the girl, you took her home, now what? Now what you can do with her? You got the eggs and the flour, or you can make a cake, or you don't know what to do with it. A lot of that stuff, you start where you're at, get some help, call our girl Bree, join the bmen.org and join our group, find some guys around you if you're not in the Denver area, but get some guys around you and learn, do what you got to do to learn these things, but be authentic. And it's one of the things I've talked about before. I'll continue to talk about, because I think it's amazing, and it shows why I call this self-confidence a love story. Is it's self-love. You got to love yourself enough to be self-confident. You got to love yourself enough to be who you are in front of everybody else. And when you do that, you're authentic. And the reason authenticity is so important, it's so much more powerful than even love. When you love yourself enough to be authentic in a room of strangers, you are going to be magnetic. That guy who doesn't care whether you like him or not, that guy who's going to be who he is, give his opinion, and tell if he doesn't know something, like all those things are that's just self-confidence. That's just self-worth. That's self-awareness. And when you're authentic like that, that's magnetic. That's when you know something's for you, because it resonates with you. That's when you know something's not for you, because it won't resonate with you, because you're being your authentic self. But when you're putting it up the front, just playing the game, putting the riz on, and just trying to get the girl, there's no depth of vision. There's no depth of purpose. There's no foundational, like, okay, I want this girl because I want to build something with her. I want this girl because she matches me and we love each other. We want to build love together and build a family together. There's none of that. There's no depth of vision when it comes to just the game, when it comes to just a pickup artist. When you're authentic, when you have the self-confidence of this is who I am, all those things will match you. All those things will be attracted to you because you are being yourself. And that's one of the things I think. It's, start where you're at, do what you got to do to get that confidence, to get that practice, but be as authentic as you can be, because that's when you know something's for you. so many of us have throughout our lives. I've been one of them. Just, oh, she's cute. I'll do whatever I can and manipulate whatever I got to do, and say yes to all the things she says just so I can get it. Then you get it, and you're like, dog that's chasing the car. Like, if I caught it, I wouldn't know what to do with it. Being authentic and having the self-confidence to be authentic is really the key to the success in all areas of your life.
You mentioned self-love, and this might even be something that'll roll over to the last segment here, but there's a thin line, and along with everything else we're talking about, there's a thin line between self-love and love of self. I firmly believe in you got to love yourself before you can love somebody else. In other words, you got to think you're worthy. You got to think you have something to offer. You got to think you're lovable in order to fully love somebody else. But then you never want to cross into the place where it's just love of self, where it's about me. And that's where arrogance is. That's where the fake, movie set comes from, where it's about me and it's about how I look. And I think that's where a lot of women get caught up with missing that part of the self-confidence thing, where it's not self-love. It's what they're seeing. It's love of self. It's a guy that, that everything he does, from his house, his car, to his workout routine and his career and all this other kind of stuff is really about him. And it's not, it's not self-confidence, it's arrogance, and it's not self-love, it's love of self. So we're going to love ourselves enough to take us a little break here. How about that?
Yeah.
And we'll be right back. Madmen of Masculinity, KLDC, 1220 AM in the Mile High City. And that's when that's when they get the bad guy and the bad boy, not the bad guy, the bad boy. The bad boy, he's, he has his, big old pickup truck or his sports car just so he can bring attention to himself. Not because, that's who he is or whatever. He thinks that's something he wants to project.
Yeah, that's something we'll talk about in the last segment, because I think a lot of ladies need to know that when a guy has self-worth, when he's self-confident and, he is being authentic, he's not going to play those games. All these games they want you to play, the love of self guy will, because he, it's all about looking good and getting the prize and the trophy, but it's not actually about something bigger than himself.
Yep. Boom.
All right. Fourth quarter, y'all.
Here we go. We're back.
Yes, we're back.
We are back from our last break. Fourth quarter here time for this particular topic.
Red zone offense. Here we go.
KLDC 1220. Talking about self-confidence. We left off talking about just how a lot of women get duped because they see a man and what they think is self-love is actually love of self. And so a lot of women get caught up in that whole thing, and really what they're dealing with is a fragile boy that's being protected by the shell of a man, as opposed to a man who's at his core trying to protect and looking to protect others around him. The former is the one that only wants to protect the wounded boy inside of him. The latter is the one that wants to make society better and wants to make the world a better place. Both of them have a tendency to be able to alter the temperature in a room, just like a little toddler boy can throw a temper tantrum and just change the whole room. It's not necessarily a good thing to be able to do that. But so a lot of women get caught up in seeing one and mistaking it for the other.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bait and switch going on, and what's really interesting when you really get down to the depths of it, you're absolutely right. A lot of those guys that have that love of self, or at least that front of love of self, because they think that's what is going to get them what they want, they were wounded in the past. Their little boy was wounded. They got heartbroken, and they said, instead of I'm gonna make myself the better version, I'm gonna love myself so that doesn't happen again, or it doesn't hurt that like that again. They say, oh, I'm gonna make sure that never happens again, and I'm gonna do all these things and learn all this code and learn the game and get this truck and this car, get this bag, get this money, and look a certain way to protect themselves. Just like you said, they're trying to protect the little wounded boy inside them. The true, authentic, self-confident guy has re-raised that little boy, has healed that little boy, And he probably isn't as showy and flashy. He probably isn't the one that is taking all the air out of the room and throwing the temper tantrum and making all the noise. That's why we tell a lot of ladies, yeah, that guy, he may be sparkly and shiny, but that's not always what you want. You might want the guy over here that's foundational and he's not as loud and brash and whatnot. And that's the guy that'll tell you no, ladies. That's the guy that'll be like, I'm not playing that game. You want me to chase you? You want to play all this drama? You want to, pitch a fit and then have me, play that game and be the nice guy and give you everyone? It's not going to happen because he's foundational. He has self-confidence. He has self-worth. So for a lot of ladies, you might want to slow down, take your time, maybe look for the guy who's a little more quiet, a little more reserved, who's definitely watching. Because a lot of really self-confident guys, a lot of guys who have their self-worth and are authentic, they like to people watch because the world's crazy. They'll just sit there and be watching and taking mental notes, be like, oh, that's interesting. But they're not as flashy, what's really interesting, Kirk and I both do this because we speak on occasion. We'll be sitting in an audience just next to people, just regular dudes, just, hey, how you doing? And then it's like our turn to go speak. And we get up on stage and all of a sudden everybody's opinion shifts. Oh, now they're on stage and now there's some famous guys. No, we're the same guy. We know what we're capable of. We know what our position is. We know what our job is, and we go do that. But it's just funny to see how that opinion shifts from some people. We're the same dudes. We're just talking on the stage like we're talking on the microphone. We know what our purpose is. We know what our passion is. We know what we're doing, and we have self-confidence in that because we have practice in that. I mean, if you go back, don't go back too far, 4 or 5 years, and you'll see how we started. So, yeah, we built self-confidence falling flat on our face, just letting you know.
Yeah, and I got a, kind of a secret inside tip for guys. The guys that want to put up a front to get a relationship or to get a woman, man, if I can just be self-confident, then when I get her, I'll pass the test and then I can just go back to being me. And the truth is that test don't ever stop. No. That test keeps testing over and over again. Once you get the girl, then
that's when the test starts.
a lot of guys think that, oh, I don't have to be that anymore. And the reality is, if that's not you, if that's something that is truly not the foundation of who you are, then it's going to tear you to shreds when you actually get into that long-term relationship. And to your point, like the pickup artist guy, that it was almost a sport to him to just get girls, but but then in the long run, it was like, meh. And so, from a guy perspective, don't ever think the test stops. The test don't ever stop. Because your self-confidence is, and there's a lot of relationships, I believe, that have ended because, what was projected or portrayed before the relationship, you weren't able to maintain that or to manage that, to hold that space, long term. And then, a woman loses that level of respect because you aren't able to keep it, and it's so easy for us to, it's so easy for us over the time to just want to be like a yes. Like, it's just easier to, I don't feel like holding up space, man. I don't feel like holding up the room. I don't feel like answering every question and giving my opinion all the time. It's like, just put the dress on and let's go, man. I don't feel like having to tell you which one looks best, brother. Which earrings, and your butt looks great. Come on, let's go, man. And so, when if that's not who you are, so my point is, you need to have that as opposed to just project that and portray that to get into a relationship, because that's one of the things, and self-confidence specifically, to be able to make decisions and determinations and opinions and to hold space and to be able to be a certain role in a room, like all of those kinds of things, man, those are life skills. Those are relationship skills that you're going to need for the long term, for the long haul.
Yeah. They're the relationship tests, the S tests that ladies give us, they never stop. But the best way to handle it, and it's like the wise man said, if you never, lie, you don't have to remember a lie. Like, telling the truth is much easier because you don't have to remember the lies. Just being yourself, being authentic, building that self-confidence, and just being like, because even if you show a woman, your partner, exactly who you are, she's still going to test you to make sure that's who you are so she can trust you. And so you want the answer to always be the same. You want the answer to always be, yes, this is who I am, and you can trust that. You know, if you can't tell her no because she's crossed the line or she says something that doesn't vibe with you, then how will she ever be able to trust you to tell another woman no? She wants you to be able to stand up to her so she knows you'll stand up to the other ladies. And the best way to do that is to be authentic, to have that self-confidence, to be like, no, this is who I am, honey. She's still going to test you because they're emotional creatures that, you know, they go with the tides of the moon and the waxing and waning moon and all those things. And so their emotions are up and down. And sometimes they'll feel confident with you. Sometimes they'll feel not confident with you. Sometimes they'll be needy, whatnot. As long as you're even keel with you, you're being you and yourself, it's much easier to handle that. It's much easier to gain that trust and that respect from your woman when she knows that you are who you are. And no matter how much she tests you, the answer is still, I'm me. This is who I am.
Yeah, even if you're a nerd, be just a nerd. And,
the baddest nerd on the planet.
Let the person that is attracted to the nerdiness be, you know, I mean, if whatever's your jam, let that be your jam, man. And you know, I don't know that men are given the permission to do that these days. I think I hear that message with women, you know, like, I'm just going to be me. And, you know, you know, the one that gets attracted to that and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if that necessarily sticks with them, but either way, I hear that messaging to women. And I don't think men get that messaging too much, that it's okay to just be you, right? It's okay to like what you like and don't like what you don't like. And I'm not saying be a jerk, but it's okay to be secure in the fact that, no, I don't dig that. You know, I like, you know, I like peanut butter and pickle sandwiches. That's my jam. You know, you ain't gotta like it, but that's, I mean, that ain't me. I'm just saying, if that is your jam, I think peanut butter and pickle sandwiches would be nasty, but whatever.
You forgot the bacon.
But point is, you know, if that's you, then just be you. If you like, you know, doing X, Y, and Z, then hey, that's just who I am, and have the self-confidence in that, and let that be enough. And realizing that you're enough, and letting your enough be the self-confidence that brings you into a room and allows you to just be who you are without having to pretend to be anything else.
Yeah. That's why ladies keep getting duped by the bad boys, because the bad boys have picked up this uniform or this attitude or this rebel thing to hide their insecureness. And they think that the ladies feel like and think that, oh, he's doing what he's doing. He's doing his thing. And that, you know, so he's confident, but he's just doing what he thinks he needs to do. He's not actually doing what he wants to do. That's why whoever you are, be the best you can be. Whatever your thing is, do that. You know, there's so much out there needs to be unique to you for you to have a happy, fulfilling, successful life. So you can gain wisdom by watching others. You can learn from others, but you still got to know you and do you. You know, you can learn from a master and follow his everything. You know, you learn from be the apprentice and journeyman with some master, like say stonemason or jeweler or martial artist. But in the end, you got to make that your own. You take what you learn and make it your own and adapt it to yourself. So even if you're learning from somebody else, don't take that as gospel and say, oh, it's got to be this way. If that's not who you really are, you know, eat the meat, spit out the bones, learn from others to make you the best version of you that you can be, so that you can get the life that is best for you. But be the best version of you that you can be. I mean, authenticity is the key to self-confidence. I think authenticity comes from that self-love and self-awareness, which will get you the golden ticket of life and the success everywhere, because you're not pretending to be somebody else. You're not having to lie about who you are. You're not having to pretend. You just are who you are, being the best you can be. That's the path.
And again, if it's for other people, then it is for them. And if it ain't, then it ain't. And, you know, not everything is your thing. Super quick, you know, story. Is a female friend of mine, and really, you know, somewhat friend of ours. She's been on here before. Very professional, very headstrong, very got her stuff together. And I was doing all the math, check boxes, and I thought, man, she'd be a great match with this other friend of ours, who, again, you know, pretty secure, pretty self-confident, you know, has nothing to be intimidated by with her. He's got his own thing, blah, 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 blah. And I connected them two, and I think they went out for coffee or lunch, something like that. And I didn't hear anything back. And then finally, when I talked to him, I was like, "Hey, whatever happened with that?" And he was just like, "Yeah, just wasn't a match. Like it wasn't, wasn't wasn't my thing, kind of, whatever." And I was like, "Wow, I mean, dude, you've been single for a hot minute, dude. I'm trying to, set
Help
you up
brother out.
with a real one." But he was just confident enough to be like, "No, this is not, not my thing." And I dug that, man. I was like, that was cool stuff, man. And so prime example of, man, when you have self-confidence, you're okay if everything doesn't work out your way, because you got depth, and you have worth, and you know that you have something to offer even to yourself, because you love yourself to that point. You're not looking for it from anywhere else,
Yeah, so that's all we're telling you, the Madmen. Be yourself, be the best you can be authentic, gain self-confidence and self-worth from that. And that's your golden ticket. That's your path to success. Just whatever is meant for you will be for you. And we're for you. And until next time, we are the Madmen of Masculinity, and we are out.
man. Out.